Hey guys, tonight we're not just reading a story, we're stepping back in time, way back to an era when luxury wasn't about designer bags or fancy cars, but about spices, silks, and the sheer audacity of moving them across vast, unforgiving lands. Imagine for a moment the sun-baked plains stretching out before you, an endless canvas of ochre and sand, shimmering under a sky so vast it makes your problems feel utterly insignificant. You're not on a leisurely vacation, though. Oh no. You're part of something far more ancient, far more brutal, a Silk Road caravan. And your role? Well, you're one of the unsung heroes, or perhaps more accurately, one of the unsung, perpetually parched and deeply miserable souls whose entire existence hinges on keeping that precious cargo safe. Let's be real, most of us wouldn't last a week out there. Dehydration would claim you, or maybe a particularly irritable scorpion. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the coarse weave of your tunic against your skin, already gritty with the dust of 1,000 miles. Your calloused hands instinctively grip the worn hilt of your scimitar, a constant dull ache in your shoulder reminding you of its ever-present weight. This isn't the romanticized adventure you might read about in scrolls. This is a grinding reality, a test of endurance that strips away every pretense of comfort. You are a caravan guard, one among a silent, watchful legion, whose lives are measured in the steady rhythmic plod of camel hooves and the ever-present threat lurking just beyond the horizon. Your initiation was brutal, a swift plunge into the unforgiving maw of the desert. There were no gentle introductions, no orientation lectures. One day you were a hopeful, perhaps desperate soul in a bustling market seeking coin, or escape from a life you no longer desired. The next you were just another body in a line, handed a blade and pointed east towards the rising sun and an uncertain future. You quickly learned that survival was the only curriculum. The desert doesn't care for your lineage, your dreams, or your fears. It cares only for your ability to endure, to protect, and to remain vigilant. The first few weeks were a haze of physical agony and mental shock. Your feet, once accustomed to soft earth or cobbled streets, became a mass of blisters and aching bones, each step a testament to your burgeoning misery. The sun, an unrelenting orb in a sky of bleached blue, seemed intent on baking you alive, sucking every drop of moisture from your body until your tongue felt like sandpaper, and your vision shimmered at the edges. You learned to ration your water, each sip a conscious act of defiance against the gnawing thirst. The taste was often brackish, lukewarm, and faintly metallic from the leather waterskins, but it was life and you drank it down, suppressing the urge to gag. The air itself was a weapon. During the day it was a searing breath whipping fine sand into your eyes, ears, and nostrils, coating everything in a fine abrasive layer. At night it plummeted, a sudden chilling descent that made your teeth chatter despite your thin blanket. You huddled with the others, seeking warmth from their proximity, listening to the rasping snores and the occasional coughs that punctuated the vast, silent darkness. Sleep was a luxury, a brief flirtation with oblivion before the biting cold or the distant howl of a jackal yanked you back to the harsh present. Your companions were a motley crew, forged in the same furnace of hardship. There were grizzled veterans with eyes that held the wisdom of countless journeys and the weariness of too many losses. Young, eager recruits, much like you, still held a flicker of naive optimism that the desert would soon extinguish. And then there were the others, the silent, watchful ones, their faces etched with unknown histories, their loyalty as fluid as the shifting sands. Trust was a rare commodity earned slowly and lost in an instant. You learned to read their subtle cues, the tightening of a jaw, the flicker in an eye, understanding that on this road everyone was both a potential ally and a potential threat. Training such as it was involved constant drilling and vigilance. You learned to handle your weapon not with grace, but with brutal efficiency. Every swing, every parry was practiced until it became muscle memory, a desperate reflex born of necessity. You learned to identify the tracks of men and beasts, to distinguish a harmless desert wind from the whisper of an approaching danger. You were taught to spot the subtle shifts in the landscape that might hide an ambush, to recognize the glint of steel, long before it was too late. Historians still debate whether these early caravan guards received formalized martial training, or if their skills were simply honed by constant, brutal necessity. Some argue for structured techniques passed down through generations, while others contend it was a more organic trial-by-fire evolution of combat prowess. From your perspective, it felt like the latter, a brutal apprenticeship where mistakes were paid for in blood. One of the first and perhaps most valuable lessons you absorbed was the importance of the animals. The camels, those magnificent, stubborn, and utterly essential beasts, were the lifeblood of the caravan. Their lumbering gait, their ability to carry immense loads, and their astounding resilience in the face of the desert's brutality made them more valuable than any single human life. You learned to respect them, to care for them, to recognize the subtle signs of their fatigue or distress. A sick or injured camel could cripple the entire caravan, leaving you stranded, vulnerable, and doomed. You often found yourself speaking to them, murmuring reassurances as you adjusted their loads, a strange unspoken bond forming between man and beast in the vast emptiness. You also quickly realized that the caravan itself was a microcosm of society, a moving village with its own rules, hierarchies, and unspoken agreements. The merchants, with their fine silks and anxious expressions, held the purse strings and made the ultimate decisions. The camel drivers, their faces tanned and leathery, knew the routes and the animals intimately. And you, the guard, were the shield, the wall between the caravan's fragile prosperity and the brutal chaos of the outside world. Your status was lower than the merchants, perhaps even on par with the camel drivers, but your role was undeniably critical. Without you, the silk would be plundered, the spices scattered, and the fortunes lost. Even within this structured misery, there were moments, fleeting glimpses that solidified the harsh realities of your chosen path. You remember your first encounter with the aftermath of a bandit raid. It wasn't the heroic clash of steel you might have envisioned. It was the chilling silence of a scattered camp, overturned wagons, and the silent, still forms of those who had failed to defend their livelihood. The sun beat down indifferent on the gruesome scene. The flies buzzed. The scent of spilled blood mingled with the dust. It was a stark, visceral lesson etched into your memory. This was not a game. This was a fight for survival where the stakes were always life and death. You tightened your grip on your scimitar, then a cold resolve settling in your gut. There would be no mercy asked and none given. The days blurred into weeks, the weeks into months. The sun continued its relentless arc across the sky, and the sands continued to shift, erasing your tracks as quickly as you made them. You began to understand the subtle language of the desert, the way the wind whispered secrets through the dunes, the ominous silence that preceded a sandstorm, the deceptive shimmer of a mirage that could drive a desperate man mad. You learned to read the stars, to navigate by their silent guidance, a fundamental skill for anyone traversing these vast, featureless expanses. It was a practical, unspoken education far more profound than anything you might have learned in a formal school. This was the desert's brutal university, and you were its reluctant, perpetually exhausted student. The sense of isolation was profound, a constant companion that gnawed at your spirit. Days could pass without seeing another soul beyond your caravan, just the endless, unchanging panorama of sand and sky. You learned to live with your own thoughts, to quiet the yearning for familiar faces, for the comfort of a settled life. Sometimes, in the dead of night, you would lie awake staring up at the impossibly vast expanse of stars, each one a pinprick of light in the infinite blackness, and wonder what stories they had witnessed, what dreams they had cradled. It was a sobering thought, a reminder of your own fleeting existence in the grand tapestry of time. There was a peculiar detail, a somewhat unusual historical fact that often came to mind during those endless, parched hours. You'd heard whispers, perhaps legends, of some ancient desert dwellers who, rather than trying to avoid the sun, would sometimes coat themselves in a thin layer of crocodile dung mixed with various oils. The theory was it would form a protective, reflective barrier preventing sunburn and cooling the skin. You'd always dismissed it as a bizarre tale, a desperate measure of the truly unhinged, but out here under the merciless sun, you sometimes wondered if there was a kernel of truth to such outlandish methods. The sheer desperation for relief could drive a man to try almost anything. thank the gods your caravan had at least some rudimentary textiles for sun protection. You remember one evening, huddled around a meager fire, the flames casting dancing shadows on the worn faces of your companions? One of the older guards, a man whose eyes held the weary wisdom of countless journeys, spoke in a low voice about the singing sands. He claimed that in certain dunes, when the wind was just right, the sand would hum a low, resonant note that could disorient travelers, leading them astray. It sounded like an old wives' tale, a superstition born of fear and isolation, but you felt a shiver run down your spine nonetheless. The desert held 1,000 secrets, 1,000 ways to claim you, and the thought of being led astray by an unseen, ethereal melody was unsettling. Your days fell into a predictable, exhausting rhythm. Wake before dawn, the air still crisp with the night's chill. Break camp, the groaning and grumbling of camels and men filling the silence. Then the endless march, a monotonous trek under the rising sun, the heat building with each passing hour. You walked at the periphery of the caravan, your eyes constantly scanning the horizon, searching for any anomaly, any dust plume that wasn't your own, any glint of metal that could signal an approaching threat. Your mind drifted sometimes to memories of home, sometimes to the imagined comforts of a cool drink or a soft bed, but always the underlying current of vigilance remained a taut string in your gut. The food was simple, repetitive, and often bland. Dried dates, hardtack, perhaps some salted meat if you were lucky. Water was precious, used sparingly for drinking, never for washing. Your body quickly adapted to this meager fare, your frame growing lean and wiry, every ounce of fat burned away by the constant exertion and the oppressive heat. You learned to appreciate the simplest things, the fleeting shade of a rocky outcrop, the cool breath of a pre-dawn breeze, the sight of a distant oasis, even if it was just a smudge on the horizon promising respite. This was your existence. This was the miserable, grueling reality of a Silk Road caravan guard. There was no glory, no fanfares, just the relentless, unyielding demands of the desert and the constant threat of those who would take what wasn't theirs. Your purpose was singular: to protect the wealth that flowed along this ancient artery of commerce, to ensure that the silks, the spices, the precious stones reached their destinations, no matter the cost to your own body and soul. And as the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in fiery hues, you braced yourself for another night. Another watch, another battle against the overwhelming vastness of the Silk Road. The desert's embrace tightens as the sun dips below the horizon, pulling with it the day's scorching heat and replacing it with a penetrating, bone-deep chill. You shiver, pulling your worn cloak tighter around you, though it offers little more than a psychological barrier against the biting cold. This isn't just about temperature, it's about survival. The dramatic shift in climate between day and night is a constant reminder of the desert's unrelenting extremes, a stark contrast to the often more temperate climes of your homeland, which now feels like a distant, fading dream. You'd kill for a warm fire, not just for the heat, but for the companionship, the sense of security it offers against the vast, whispering darkness. Your watch begins. The rhythmic thump-thump of your own blood in your ears is the loudest sound in the profound silence. Above the stars ignite a brilliant, uncountable tapestry spread across the black velvet sky. There's a peculiar beauty to it, a stark majesty that can almost make you forget the gnawing hunger in your gut or the fatigue dragging at your limbs. Almost. You learn to discern constellations not for their mythical tales, but for their practical use in navigation. The North Star, that unwavering beacon, becomes a silent friend, a reminder of direction and purpose in a world that constantly tries to disorient you. You've heard of mariners who use the stars to guide their ships across trackless oceans. Out here on this ocean of sand, you do the same. The monotonous, grueling trek defines your existence. Each day is a carbon copy of the last, distinguished only by subtle changes in the landscape. A particularly gnarled, thorny bush, a cluster of sun-bleached rocks, the telltale ripples of a recent sandstorm. You walk, and then you walk some more. Your mind at first resists this relentless repetition, craving novelty stimulation. But the desert slowly, inexorably grinds down these desires. You learn to enter a kind of meditative state, one foot following the other, your gaze fixed on the shifting sands just ahead. It's a trance-like existence broken only by the sharp command of a merchant, the sudden cry of a camel driver, or the ever-present primal fear of an unseen threat. Thirst is your constant companion, a phantom limb that aches with every breath. You've long since stopped thinking about sweet water, about clear springs. Now every drop from your leather skin, warm and tasting faintly of the hide, is a blessing. You've witnessed what true dehydration does: the cracked lips, the swollen tongue, the disorientation, the eventual merciful collapse. You push these images from your mind, forcing yourself to focus on the task at hand, on the rhythmic crunch of sand under your boots. There's a saying among the old guards: the desert always gets its due. You understand that now. It might not be with a bandit's blade, but with the slow, insidious drain of your very life force. The sheer vastness of the landscape is both awe-inspiring and terrifying. You often find yourself standing on a ridge looking out at miles and miles of emptiness, and the thought hits you: if I were alone out here, I'd be dead. It's a humbling realization, reinforcing the necessity of the caravan, this fragile, moving island of humanity, against the overwhelming indifference of nature. You learn to appreciate the shade of a camel, the brief respite it offers from the relentless sun, even if it's just for a moment. Every small comfort, every tiny reprieve becomes an unforgettable luxury. Days are marked by the unceasing struggle against the elements. Sandstorms are a particular terror. You see them coming often as a distant reddish smudge on the horizon, growing with frightening speed into a towering, roaring wall of dust and grit. There's no escaping it, only enduring. You throw yourself to the ground, pulling your cloak over your head, pressing your face into the sand to breathe the precious, unfiltered air. The wind howls a demonic shriek, and the sand lashes at you, 1,000 tiny needles piercing your skin. It fills your mouth, your nose, your ears, finds its way into every crevice of your clothing. When it finally passes, often hours later, you emerge a ghost-like figure coughing up dust. Your eyes gritty, your hair plastered to your scalp. The world is transformed, the dunes reshaped, every familiar landmark erased. It's a reset button pressed by nature, forcing you to reorient and push on. You've developed a sixth sense for danger, a prickling awareness that rises from your gut. A sudden silence among the usual desert sounds, a strange ripple in the distant heat haze, the faint scent of smoke carried on the wind. These become signals urging you to vigilance. You learn to distinguish the tracks of different animals, knowing which ones are harmless and which might signal the approach of predators both four-legged and two-legged. One fascinating, though rarely discussed aspect of caravan life was the sophisticated communication systems guards developed to warn of approaching danger. Historians often focus on the larger battles, but the subtle preemptive warnings, a particular bird call, a specific flag signal, a coded whistle, were crucial to avoiding confrontation altogether. You're part of that quiet, intricate network, your life, depending on your ability to send and receive those vital messages. Mealtimes are brief, functional affairs. You squat on the sand, gnawing on dried fruit or tough jerky, washing it down with another precious sip of water. Conversation is sparse, often limited to practical matters: the condition of the camels, the remaining distance, the watch schedule. There's little room for idle chatter or pleasantries. Energy is too precious to waste. But sometimes an older guard might share a story, a legend of a haunted oasis or a particularly clever bandit, his voice low and gravelly, the narrative punctuated by the crackle of a meager fire. These moments are rare, small sparks of humanity in the vast indifference of the desert, and you cling to them. You recall one particularly tough stretch, a seemingly endless expanse of flat, featureless salt flats where the heat shimmered off the ground as if it were a lake. It played tricks on your eyes, conjuring mirages of lush oases and sparkling rivers, only for them to vanish as you approached. It was a cruel psychological torment, and you watched as some of the younger guards faltered, their eyes wide with desperate hope, only to be crushed by the illusion. You learned to ignore them, to fix your gaze on the real horizon, no matter how distant or bleak it seemed. It was a harsh lesson in mental discipline, a reminder that your mind could be as much an enemy as any bandit. The wear and tear on your body is constant. Your joints ache, your muscles protest with every movement. Your skin is perpetually chapped and burnt, despite the crude attempts at sun protection. Perhaps a thick layer of animal fat, or merely the constant cover of your cloak. You've seen your own reflection in a rare pool of water, a gaunt, weathered face staring back, eyes narrowed against the sunlines, etched by exhaustion and worry. You barely recognize the person you once were. This journey, this existence, strips away all pretense, leaving only the raw, enduring core of yourself. You find yourself doing things you never imagined, mending torn saddlebags with stiff, cold fingers, helping to pull a struggling camel from a patch of soft sand, the sheer effort making your muscles scream, sharpening your scimitar by the light of the moon, the rasping sound echoing in the stillness. These are not glorious tasks, but they are an essential part of the unending cycle of maintenance and survival that defines your days. Every action, no matter how small, contributes to the continued progress of the caravan, to the protection of its precious cargo. The merchants bundled in their finer robes often ride at the center of the caravan, somewhat shielded from the worst of the elements. You resent them a little for their relative comfort, for the fact that your misery serves their profit. But you also understand that without their goods, there would be no caravan, no work, no purpose for your grim journey. It's a symbiotic relationship, albeit one weighted heavily on the shoulders of those who guard and toil. You are the expendable element, the first line of defense, and you know it. It breeds a certain fatalism, a grim acceptance of your lot. Sometimes a brief, unexpected moment of beauty breaks through the monotony. A flock of desert birds, their wings catching the sunlight, soaring gracefully above the dunes. The sight of a lone gazelle, elegant and swift, silhouetted against the setting sun. These fleeting images, though rare, are a sharp contrast to the harshness, a reminder that even in this desolate landscape, life persists. You cling to them, these tiny sparks of wonder, as you continue your slow, relentless march across the endless sun-baked plains. The horizon never seems to get closer, and the promise of a destination feels perpetually out of reach, a mirage in itself. This is your life now, dust heat cold, and the unceasing rhythm of the camel's gait. As the caravan presses onward, you enter a new phase of your misery, the nightmares on the sands. It's one thing to endure the physical torment of the desert during the day, to battle the sun and the dust. It's another entirely to face the chilling silence of the desert nights, where every shadow seems to writhe with unseen threats and every distant sound is amplified into a harbinger of doom. Sleep, already a fleeting luxury, becomes even more elusive, haunted by the ever-present threat of bandits and the gnawing anxiety that infiltrates your very bones. Your watch duties intensify at night. The air, once searing, now bites with a cold that penetrates your worn clothing, chilling you to the core. You pace the perimeter of the camp, your eyes straining against the darkness, trying to discern shapes from the shifting dunes. The camels, surprisingly alert even in sleep, occasionally stir their low grunts echoing in the stillness. You listen for anything out of place, the muffled thump of hooves on sand, the distant glint of a fire that isn't yours, the faint whisper of voices carried on the wind. Every shadow becomes a potential attacker, every rustle of dry brush a hidden assailant. Your imagination, deprived of rest, conjures up vivid scenarios of ambush, of desperate struggles in the dark. The psychological toll of this constant vigilance is immense. You find yourself jumping at your own shadow, your nerves frayed and stretched taut. The line between reality and hallucination blurs around the edges of your vision. You've heard tales of guards driven mad by the isolation and the fear, wandering off into the desert to become just another sun-bleached skeleton. You push these thoughts away, focusing on the simple, repetitive task of scanning, listening, and maintaining your post. Survival depends on your ability to remain grounded, to distinguish between genuine threat and the tricks your exhausted mind plays on you. One of the most terrifying aspects of Night Watch is the silence. It's not a peaceful quiet, but a vast, oppressive emptiness that seems to absorb all sound. In this vacuum, the smallest noise becomes an alarm bell. The scuttle of a desert beetle, the cry of a distant owl, the soft sigh of the wind. Each sound is amplified, scrutinized, analyzed for its potential danger. It's a constant low-level hum of anxiety, a primal fear of the unknown, lurking just beyond the campfire's feeble glow. Bandits are not a myth. They are a harsh reality of the Silk Road. They are often former guards themselves, or desperate men hardened by the same brutal desert you endure. They know the routes, the weaknesses of the caravans, the precise moments to strike. They are predators, and you are the prey, or rather the guardian of the prey. You've heard the stories: swift, brutal raids, the flash of steel in the moonlight, the desperate screams, and then the chilling silence as they disappear back into the vast darkness, leaving behind only death and ruin. You recall a particular night, the air thick with the scent of dust and distant wood smoke. You were on watch, your eyes heavy-lidded, fighting the urge to succumb to sleep. Suddenly, a faint glint caught your eye, a momentary reflection of starlight on something unnatural. You froze your hand, instinctively reaching for your scimitar. It was barely a ripple in the sand, but it was enough. You whispered a warning, a coded signal to the guard nearest you, and a ripple of quiet alertness spread through the camp. One common yet largely unrecorded tactic used by Silk Road bandits was to scout caravans for days, observing their routines and identifying weak points before striking. This prolonged surveillance often led to extreme paranoia among the guards, as every shadow could conceal an unseen eye. The ensuing engagement was swift and brutal. There was no grand battle, no heroic charge. Just a sudden, chaotic explosion of shouts, the clash of metal, and the panicked cries of the camels. You were plunged into a maelstrom of shadows and violence, your instincts taking over. You swung your scimitar, parrying a blow that would have ended your journey, feeling the jarring impact as steel met steel. The fight was messy, desperate, and utterly terrifying. You fought not for glory, but for survival, for the lives of those you were sworn to protect, and for your own miserable existence. When it was over as quickly as it had begun, the silence descended once more, but this time it was different. It was the heavy silence of death. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of blood and the acrid scent of fear. You stood panting, your heart hammering against your ribs, your body trembling with the aftershocks of adrenaline. Several of the attackers lay still on the sand, dark stains spreading beneath them. And closer to you, one of your own, a young recruit whose face you barely knew, lay motionless, his eyes staring blankly at the indifferent stars. The cost of vigilance, the price of failure, was laid bare before you. The aftermath of such an attack is almost as harrowing as the attack itself. You help to secure the camp, to tend to the wounded, to silently move the fallen. There's little time for grief or ceremony. The bodies are quickly buried, marked only by a pile of rocks, lest they attract scavengers. The caravan must move on. The desert doesn't wait for your mourning. It demands relentless progress and unyielding forward momentum. You learn to harden yourself, to push down the fear and the sorrow, to focus on the next watch, the next mile, the next breath. Historians still debate the true effectiveness of caravan guards against well-organized banditry. Some sources suggest that well-armed and numerous guards could deter most attacks, while others emphasize the sheer audacity and cunning of the bandits, often overwhelming smaller groups. From your perspective, it feels like a constant gamble, a throw of the dice every night. You can be the most skilled warrior, but against overwhelming numbers or a perfectly executed ambush, your chances are slim. The nights are also filled with the eerie sounds of the desert wildlife. The howl of a distant wolf, a chilling, mournful cry that echoes across the dunes. The screech of a desert owl hunting silently in the darkness. The slithering sound of a snake, unseen but ever present. These sounds, though natural, contribute to the pervasive sense of unease, a constant reminder that you are a stranger in an ancient, untamed land. You learn to distinguish these sounds from those that signal human presence, but the underlying tension never truly dissipates. Sometimes a particularly strong gust of wind can create phantom voices in the dunes, a low moaning sound that seems to carry whispers. It's a trick of the acoustics, an illusion created by the shifting sand, but in the dead of night, when your mind is exhausted and your senses are heightened, it can be truly unnerving. You find yourself straining to hear, trying to decipher words where there are none, your grip tightening on your weapon. It's another example of the desert's insidious way of playing with your sanity. You quickly learn the importance of communal warmth. Huddling together, even in silence, offers a small measure of comfort against the cold and the fear. The shared misery creates an unspoken bond, a fleeting sense of camaraderie among those who face the same dangers. You might not know their names or their histories, but you share the same grim determination to survive another night, to see another dawn. It's a primal connection forged in the crucible of shared hardship. There's a subtle, almost unnoticeable detail that becomes a marker of your increasing acclimatization to this harsh life. The way you instinctively scan the ground for tracks even when off duty. Your eyes are constantly analyzing the patterns in the sand, looking for irregularities for signs of passage. It's a habit born of necessity, a subconscious vigilance that never truly turns off. Your senses are perpetually heightened, your body, a finely tuned instrument of survival. You reflect in those long, dark hours on the sheer brutality of the world you now inhabit. There's no law out here beyond the strength of your blade and the cunning of your mind. Justice is a concept left behind in the cities, a luxury that doesn't exist on the endless stretches of the Silk Road. Here might makes right, and the swiftness of your strike can mean the difference between life and death. It's a harsh lesson, one that strips away any remaining innocence you might have clung to. As the first faint sliver of dawn appears on the horizon, painting the sky in soft hues of purple and gold, a wave of profound relief washes over you. The terror of the night slowly recedes, replaced by the familiar yet still daunting challenges of the day. You survived another night. You guarded the cargo. You are still alive. But the exhaustion is bone deep, and the memory of the darkness and the dangers it held will linger until the sun once again sets, pulling you back into the unsettling grip of the desert night. After the harrowing ordeal of the night, the rising sun brings a cruel form of relief, trading the terrors of darkness for the relentless baking heat. But with the dawn also comes the promise, however distant, of fleeting comforts and rough trades. You learn to live for these small reprieves, the brief moments of respite that punctuate the endless grind of the journey. The thought of them, even when they are days away, is often the only thing that keeps you going. The caravan's progress, while slow, is inexorable. Each day you cover more ground, each passing mile bringing you closer to the next oasis, the next trading post, the next temporary haven in this sea of sand. These aren't the lush, palm-fringed paradises of travelers' tales. More often than not, they are simply a meager well, a few stunted date palms offering thin shade, and perhaps a small makeshift collection of tents where other weary travelers gather. But to you, they are sanctuaries. The anticipation of reaching an oasis is palpable. It's a whisper that runs through the caravan, a silent agreement that pushes everyone a little harder, a little faster. You picture the water not just for drinking, but for washing the accumulated grime of days from your skin, for soaking your aching feet. You dream of food that isn't dried and hard, of perhaps a fresh piece of fruit, or even just a warm, freshly baked flatbread. These simple desires become monumental luxuries in your harsh reality. When you finally arrive at an oasis, the immediate feeling is one of overwhelming, bone-deep relief. The camels, sensing the water, pick up their pace, their heavy breathing becoming more excited. You too feel a surge of energy pushing through the final steps, your eyes fixed on the shimmering water source. The first priority is always the water. You drink deeply, slowly, letting the cool liquid wash away the dust and the thirst, feeling it revitalize your parched body. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated pleasure. After the initial rush, the oasis becomes a hive of activity. The camel drivers attend to their beasts, watering them, checking their loads, and allowing them to rest. Merchants unroll their precious carpets, lay out their spices, and display their silks, eager to trade with anyone who passes through. And you, the guard, find a brief window of reprieve from your constant vigilance. While still alert, the concentrated nature of the camp offers a degree of communal security that the open desert does not. You take advantage of this time to tend to your meager belongings, to check the edge of your scimitar to mend any tears in your clothing. You might even find a small pool of water for a quick, brutal wash, splashing the cool liquid over your face and arms, feeling the grit and dust wash away, however temporarily. The feeling of relative cleanliness is almost as invigorating as the water itself. Food at the oasis, while still simple, feels like a feast. Perhaps some fresh dates, plump and sweet, or a handful of roasted nuts. If you're lucky and if the oasis is larger, you might find a vendor selling a bowl of warm lentil stew or a piece of grilled meat. These are moments of pure unburdened enjoyment, savored slowly, each bite a precious luxury. You watch the other travelers, their faces etched with similar stories of hardship, finding their own small comforts. These oases are not just sources of water, they are crossroads of humanity. People from different cultures speaking different languages, dressed in varied attire, converge here. You see merchants from the east, their silks shimmering, their faces serene. Nomads from the desert, their eyes sharp and wary, their movements fluid. Pilgrims on their way to distant holy sites, their faces alight with devotion. It's a living tapestry of the Silk Road, a vibrant, if temporary, display of the diverse lives intertwined by this ancient trade route. You listen to the snippets of conversation around you, picking up fragments of news and gossip reports of bandit activity on other routes, rumors of political unrest in distant cities, whispers of new goods arriving from far-off lands. It's a crude form of information exchange, a vital network that keeps everyone informed of the dangers and opportunities that lie ahead. Historians often emphasize the economic role of oases, but their function as vital communication hubs, connecting disparate communities and sharing crucial intelligence, is perhaps equally significant. You learn more here in a few hours than you do in weeks on the open road. The economics of the Silk Road become clearer in these trading posts. You see the intricate bargaining, the subtle gestures, the fierce haggling over prices. A merchant might spend hours negotiating over a single bale of silk, knowing that a difference of a few coins could mean the difference between profit and ruin. You understand that your role as a guard is fundamental to this entire intricate system. Without your protection, the goods would never reach these markets, and the wealth of nations would grind to a halt. You are a silent, miserable cog in a vast, prosperous machine. Sometimes you might trade a small item yourself, something you've scavenged or found, for a piece of fruit or a bit of tobacco. It's a small act of personal agency, a momentary reclaim of your individuality in a life that largely strips it away. You might even find a moment to simply sit and observe watching the play of light and shadow on the ancient walls of a ruined caravanserai or the way the dust dances in the afternoon sun. These are your moments of peace, however fleeting. But the oasis is never a permanent home. There's always the nagging awareness that your time is limited. The caravan will rest, resupply, and then inevitably move on. The merchants are driven by profit, by deadlines, by the relentless demands of trade. The call to depart often comes too soon, just as you begin to feel a semblance of comfort. You collect your meager belongings, adjust your pack, and prepare once more for the open road. Leaving an oasis is always a bittersweet moment. You feel the pull of the water, the brief taste of civilization, but the duty calls. You fall back into formation, your eyes once again scanning the horizon, your hand resting on your scimitar. The fresh water in your skin feels heavier, a reminder of the respite you just had, and the long miles stretching ahead until the next one. The dust rises again, coating your boots, your clothes, your skin, and the rhythm of the camel hooves resumes its monotonous beat. You recall a particular oasis, larger than most, where there was a blind storyteller, his face weathered and wise, who would sit by the well and recount tales for a few coins or a shared meal. He spoke of ancient heroes of distant lands, of the very fabric of the Silk Road itself. His voice, raspy but resonant, was a brief escape from the grim reality, a reminder that the world contained more than just dust and danger. You would sit and listen, captivated, even though you knew every word was a fleeting illusion, a temporary reprieve from the brutal truth of your journey. It's a curious detail often overlooked in official histories, but these informal cultural exchanges where news stories and traditions were passed by word of mouth in the brief safety of an oasis were incredibly important for cultural diffusion along the Silk Road. The feeling of being constantly on the road permeates your very being. You carry your home on your back, your entire existence condensed into a small pack, and the clothes on your body. There's no fixed address, no familiar bed. Every night is spent under the open sky or in the cramped confines of a tent. This rootless existence becomes your norm, transforming your definition of home into the ever-moving caravan itself. Even the most brutal of journeys must have moments of contrast, and these stops, however brief, provide just enough reprieve to make the next stretch bearable. They are the punctuation marks in the long, drawn-out sentence of your misery. They remind you of what you are fighting for, what you are protecting, and the vast, intricate network of trade that relies on your suffering. And as the sun once again begins its descent, casting long, stark shadows across the endless desert, you look forward, or perhaps simply resign yourself to the next stretch and the next distant, fleeting comfort. The brief comforts of the oasis fade with each passing mile, replaced by the crushing weight of your responsibilities. As a caravan guard, your existence is inextricably linked to the precious cargo you protect. You are a human shield, a living barrier between vast fortunes and the rapacious eyes of those who would seize them. The value of the wares you guard is immense, often exceeding the combined wealth of every soul in the caravan. This knowledge settles in your gut, a heavy, unshakable burden for you. Understand the dire consequences of failure. You walk beside the camels, their towering forms laden with bundles and chests, each one a potential target. You know without being told that within those sturdy crates lie bolts of shimmering silk, meticulously woven in distant looms destined for the robes of emperors or the garments of wealthy merchants in faraway lands. There are sacks of fragrant spices, cinnamon pepper cloves worth more than their weight in gold in the European markets, a taste of the exotic East to awaken jaded palates. And perhaps most tantalizing, there are glints of precious stones, rubies, sapphires, emeralds mined from forgotten mountains, waiting to adorn crowns and necklaces. Each item represents untold wealth, weeks, months, or even years of painstaking labor, and the dreams of countless individuals. The merchants, despite their outward composure, are bundles of barely contained anxiety. Their fortunes, their reputations, often their very lives are tied to the safe delivery of this cargo. You see the way their eyes constantly dart to the loaded camels, a silent plea for your unwavering vigilance. Their nervousness is infectious, adding another layer of tension to your already frayed nerves. You are their investment, their insurance, and the pressure of that role is a constant grinding ache. Your understanding of the cargo's value isn't merely academic, it's visceral. You know that if even a single bale of silk is lost, if a sack of spices is plundered, it impacts the entire caravan's profit, sometimes critically. You've heard tales of merchants ruined, of entire families brought to destitution by a single catastrophic raid. This isn't just about abstract wealth, it's about livelihoods, about the intricate web of commerce that stretches across continents. And you are a crucial, if lowly, thread in that web. The sheer scale of the operation is often overwhelming. You are just one small part of a colossal undertaking. The weight of the wares isn't just physical, it's symbolic. You are carrying the economic hopes of empires on your calloused shoulders. And every rustle in the distant dunes, every unexpected silence makes your heart pound with the fear of failing that monumental trust. You learn to perform a constant, almost subconscious inventory in your mind. How many camels are the loads secure? Are there any signs of tampering? Your gaze sweeps over the tightly bound bundles looking for any frayed ropes, any suspicious tears in the canvas. It's a tedious, unending task, but one that is absolutely vital. A small oversight could lead to a catastrophic loss, and you would bear the blame. Historians frequently discuss the logistical challenges of transporting such valuable goods across vast distances, but they sometimes overlook the intricate measures taken by guards to ensure cargo security beyond mere armed defense. This included coded markings on bales, specialized knots for securing loads, and even subtle psychological tactics to deter potential thieves by creating an impression of impregnability. From your side of things, it's a constant chess match, an ongoing battle of wits against unseen adversaries. The penalties for negligence or worse complicity in theft are severe. You've heard whispers of guards being abandoned in the desert, left to face the elements alone, a slow and agonizing death. Or worse, being handed over to local authorities for public execution, a brutal warning to others. The fear of such a fate is a powerful motivator, a cold knot in your stomach that pushes you to maintain vigilance even when exhaustion threatens to overwhelm you. You remember one day a strong gust of wind pulled at a loose corner of a camel's load, exposing a flash of deep crimson. It was a glimpse of raw silk, impossibly rich in color, shimmering even under the harsh sun. For a moment, you paused captivated by its beauty, a stark contrast to the dust and grime that coated your own existence. Then, with a jolt, you were reminded of its immense value and the danger it represented. You quickly secured the flap, your heart thumping a clear signal that even the smallest exposure could invite disaster. The caravans also carried less glamorous but equally vital goods. Supplies for the journey itself, water-dried food, spare parts for wagons' feed for the animals. These were the necessities, the foundation upon which the more valuable cargo traveled. You understood that even these mundane items were critical. Lose your water, and the most precious silks become worthless and lives are forfeit. The interconnectedness of everything on the Silk Road becomes strikingly clear. Sometimes in the dead of night, you'd find yourself staring at the shadowy outlines of the loaded camels, wondering about the destination of their contents. Who would wear that silk? What exotic dish would that spice flavor? What royal finger would that ruby adorn? It was a fleeting moment of detachment, a way to mentally escape the grim reality of your present by contemplating the glorious future of the objects you guarded. It was a curious kind of connection, a strange intimacy with inanimate objects whose worth dictated so much of your suffering. The merchants in their own way are also at the mercy of the elements and the bandits. While they might be better clothed and fed, their anxiety is perhaps even greater than yours, for they stand to lose everything. You see the deep lines of worry around their eyes, the nervous gestures they make. This shared vulnerability, however uneven, creates a strange, unspoken bond, a sense that you are all in this precarious journey together. You also become acutely aware of the delicate balance of power within the caravan. The merchants pay you, but without you they are helpless. This unspoken power dynamic means that while you are technically their subordinate, your expertise and bravery are indispensable. It's a subtle dance where respect is earned not by rank, but by demonstrated competence and loyalty in the face of danger. You are a professional, even if your profession is simply to suffer and protect. There was one peculiar incident, a minor event that nonetheless highlighted the constant fear of loss. A small, intricately carved wooden box no larger than your hand fell from a loosely packed camel. It contained tiny fragrant beads, probably ambergris or some rare resin. The merchant, usually stoic, almost collapsed in panic, seeing his potential fortune scattered. The sheer relief when it was recovered unharmed was almost comical, a testament to the immense value placed on even the smallest items. This odd little detail often goes unnoticed in grand narratives of trade, but the meticulous care taken for even seemingly minor high-value goods like rare perfumes or medicinal herbs could be astonishing. The weight of the wares, therefore, is not just about their physical mass. It's about the burden of responsibility, the constant pressure of vigilance, the understanding that one mistake, one moment of weakness could spell disaster for everyone. Every mile is a testament to your endurance, every successful journey a silent victory against overwhelming odds. And as the sun continues its relentless march across the sky, you carry that weight step by agonizing step, protecting fortunes that will never be your own. The relentless march continues, but amidst the dust and the danger, there are moments fleeting yet powerful when you encounter the humanity in the haze. The Silk Road isn't just a path for goods. It's a conduit for people, a vibrant, constantly moving tapestry of diverse cultures and unexpected connections. In this crucible of shared hardship, strange unspoken bonds form, offering glimpses of the enduring human spirit. You meet them at the scattered oases, or sometimes their smaller caravans merge with yours for a safer passage through particularly dangerous stretches. There are the pilgrims, their faces serene despite the arduous journey, driven by unwavering faith to distant shrines. You see the calloused hands of artisans carrying their unique crafts, intricate carvings, delicate pottery, vibrant textiles, hoping to find a market for their skill. There are often scholars, their scrolls carefully protected, seeking ancient knowledge in far-off libraries or spreading new ideas from one corner of the world to another. Each person is a story, a life as complex and challenging as your own, unfolding against the backdrop of this vast and different landscape. You learn to read people quickly, a skill honed by necessity. The wary glint in a nomad's eye, the open curiosity of a young merchant, the quiet dignity of an elder. Trust is still a rare commodity, but sometimes a shared meal around a crackling fire or a simple act of assistance can forge a temporary alliance, a moment of mutual recognition that transcends language barriers. One such encounter stands out in your memory. It was with a family of entertainers, a father, his two daughters, and a trained monkey, traveling from a city in the east, performing for meager coin at every caravanserai they passed. They carried no valuable cargo, only their instruments and their talents. Their faces were as dusty and sun-beaten as yours, yet there was a lightness to them, a resilience that stemmed from their ability to bring joy, however fleeting, to weary travelers. One evening at a small, barren camp, they set up their crude stage. The father played a stringed instrument, its melodies haunting and evocative, while his daughters danced their movements fluid and graceful even on the uneven sand. The monkey, dressed in a tiny, colorful tunic, performed tricks eliciting rare laughter from the hardened guards and merchants. For a few precious moments, the grim realities of the road faded. You watched mesmerized, feeling a strange warmth spread through you, a reminder of the beauty and lightness that still existed in the world, even out here. After their performance, the father shared a small cup of spiced tea, a precious commodity, with you. He spoke little, but his eyes held a profound understanding. He knew hardship, knew the struggle for survival, just as you did. And in that shared silence over a simple cup of tea, you felt a connection, a momentary sense of belonging that was rare and deeply cherished. It was a reminder that the Silk Road, despite its dangers, was also a pathway for culture, for art, for the exchange of human spirit. One intriguing, though often overlooked aspect of Silk Road travel was the prevalence of traveling entertainers, storytellers, and musicians who played a crucial role in disseminating culture and news across vast distances, often serving as a vital link between isolated communities. You also encounter the permanent residents of the route, the weathered caravanserai, masters, their faces etched with years of welcoming and farewelling travelers. The solitary hermits living near ancient wells, offering water and quiet wisdom to those who seek it. And the various local tribes whose territories you traverse, some wary, some welcoming, all demanding a certain respect. These interactions, however brief, paint a richer picture of the world, reminding you that your journey is part of a much larger ongoing human drama. There's a common unspoken language of the road, a universal understanding forged in shared adversity, a nod of acknowledgement, a shared glance of exhaustion, a silent offer of water. These gestures transcend spoken words, building bridges between strangers. You witness acts of surprising kindness, a merchant sharing a portion of his dried fruit with a hungry camel driver, an old woman offering a blessing to a passing guard, a small child curious and unafraid, offering a tiny smooth stone as a gift. These moments are precious sparks of warmth in the cold indifference of the desert. You learn to pick up fragments of their languages enough to understand simple requests or warnings. Water. Danger. Thank you. These basic words become powerful tools for communication, allowing for rudimentary interactions that deepen your understanding of the diverse peoples who populate this ancient highway. The cacophony of different tongues at a busy oasis is a testament to the global reach of the Silk Road, a babble of commerce and culture. Sometimes you might share a campfire with another group of guards, perhaps from a different caravan traveling in the opposite direction. You exchange stories, compare experiences, offer warnings about the stretches of road ahead. These are moments of raw honesty where the usual guardedness falls away. You learn of new bandit tactics, of dangerous weather patterns, of reliable water sources. This informal network of information is vital for survival, a testament to the fact that even in this harsh environment, cooperation can be a lifeline. Academics still debate the exact extent to which these informal networks of information sharing amongst guards and travelers impacted overall caravan security and efficiency. Was it a system of organized intelligence or merely anecdotal warnings? To you, it felt like genuine practical wisdom passed from one survivor to another. You observe the varied customs and beliefs of those you encounter. The way different groups pray, the rituals they perform for good fortune, the specific foods they eat. It's a constant passive education, broadening your understanding of the vast tapestry of human existence beyond your own narrow world. You might not always understand their ways, but you learn to respect them, recognizing that everyone, regardless of their background, is simply trying to survive and make their way in this challenging world. There was one time a merchant caravan traveling from the west, their goods distinctly different, perhaps furs or amber, camped beside yours. Their guards were large, burly men dressed in heavier cloaks, their weapons unfamiliar. Despite the initial tension, a shared threat, a sudden distant dust cloud brought you all together. You stood shoulder to shoulder, a silent, grim line of defense ready to face whatever came. The threat passed, but the moment of shared purpose, the recognition of a common enemy, forged a silent respect between the two groups. It was a clear demonstration that on the Silk Road, survival often transcended cultural differences. These moments of human connection, however brief, are what sustain you. They are the light in the overwhelming darkness of your miserable existence. They remind you that you are not just a cog in a machine, but a human being connected to a vast network of other human beings, all striving, struggling, and enduring together on this ancient vital path. And as the sun once again sets, painting the sky with the promise of another challenging night, you carry these fleeting memories with you, tiny embers of warmth against the pervasive chill of the desert. Just when you think you've mastered the art of enduring the desert's physical and psychological assaults, the true tests begin. The greatest dangers on the Silk Road aren't always external. Sometimes they fester within the caravan itself. You learn often through bitter experience that betrayal and backstabbers are as real a threat as any bandit, adding a chilling layer of paranoia to your already miserable existence. The caravan, for all its shared misery and fleeting camaraderie, is still a collection of individuals, each with their own desires, their own secrets, and sometimes their own desperate agendas. Merchants eager for greater profit might try to shortchange their fellow travelers or even abandon them if they become a liability. Camel drivers pushed to their limits might neglect their animals or steal provisions. And among the guards themselves, the constant pressure and the ever-present temptation of valuable cargo can corrupt even the most steadfast soul. You've witnessed the subtle shifts, the guarded glances, the whispers that suddenly cease when you approach. Trust, already a fragile thing in this harsh environment, becomes even more precarious. You learn to watch your back, not just for dangers on the horizon, but for the dangers lurking within your own ranks. It's a bitter pill to swallow, realizing that the very people you rely on for survival could, in a moment of weakness or greed, become your most dangerous adversaries. The first hint of such internal rot often manifests as missing supplies. A water skin inexplicably half empty, a sack of dried fruit lighter, then it should be a vital rope missing from the supply wagon. At first, it's easy to blame the desert, the wind, or simple oversight. But when the incidents become more frequent, when specific items disappear repeatedly, a cold suspicion begins to fester. You start to eye your companions with a new level of scrutiny, searching for the telltale signs of guilt in their faces and their nervous gestures. One particularly chilling incident etched itself into your memory. It was a cold, starless night, and you were on watch. You noticed a shadowy figure slipping away from the main camp, moving with unnatural stealth towards the loaded camels. Your heart pounded. You followed, keeping to the deeper shadows, your hand on your scimitar. It wasn't a bandit. It was one of the younger guards, a fresh-faced recruit who had seemed eager and reliable. He was attempting to cut a small, easily concealed package from a camel's load, probably a bundle of valuable spices. The confrontation was swift and silent. You tackled him, pinning him to the sand, his muffled cry swallowed by the vast silence of the desert. The struggle was desperate but brief. He fought with the panic of a trapped animal, but your hardened strength and training prevailed. You dragged him back to the camp, the stolen goods clutched in his trembling hand. The revelation sent a ripple of shock and disgust through the caravan. The betrayal from within felt far more grievous than any attack from external bandits. The consequences were swift and brutal, a grim demonstration of the Silk Road's unforgiving justice. There was no trial, no extended deliberation. The merchant, his face grim with cold fury, made the decision. The young guard was stripped of his meager possessions, his weapon, and his water. He was then bound and left in the open desert, a chilling example for anyone else contemplating such treachery. You averted your gaze, but the image of him small and desperate in the vast emptiness was burned into your mind. Historians acknowledge that internal theft and betrayal were significant challenges for caravans, though specific punitive measures varied widely depending on the caravan's leadership and the local customs. The harshness often reflected the perceived threat to the entire group's survival. This incident instilled a profound sense of paranoia. You now constantly assess your companions not just for their loyalty, but for their potential breaking points. Who among them is desperate enough to steal? Who is weak enough to be corrupted? Who harbors a hidden resentment that could turn into sabotage? It's an exhausting mental burden, always questioning, always analyzing. The shared misery that sometimes fostered camaraderie could also, in a heartbeat, turn into mutual suspicion. The pressure of protecting the cargo also bred internal conflicts among the guards themselves. Disputes over watch schedules, arguments over meager rations, or even jostling for a more comfortable spot around the campfire could escalate into heated words and sometimes even physical altercations. These were quickly suppressed, for any internal division was an invitation to disaster, but the simmering resentments remained a low-burning fire beneath the surface. You learn to recognize the signs of a man at his breaking point: the vacant stare, the sudden outburst of anger over a trivial matter, the obsessive hoarding of water or food. These are the individuals most susceptible to temptation, most likely to turn on their own. You develop a grim empathy for them, understanding the immense pressure they are under, but knowing that their weakness could cost everyone their lives. It's a chilling calculus of survival. Sometimes the betrayal wasn't about theft, but about cowardice. You recall a time when a dust cloud on the horizon quickly resolved itself into a small group of riders clearly hostile. As the caravan prepared for defense, one of the guards, a man who had boasted loudly of his bravery, simply fled melting away into the dunes, abandoning his post and his comrades. His desertion left a critical gap in the defensive line, forcing others to stretch themselves thinner to take on greater risks. While the attack was repelled, the contempt for the deserter was far more potent than the fear of the bandits. It was a stark reminder that courage, like loyalty, was a choice, and not everyone made the right one. There's a subtle, almost unspoken understanding that forms among the truly reliable guards, those who have proven their mettle and their loyalty. You recognize each other with a silent nod, a shared glance that says, "I trust you to have my back, and you trust me to have yours." This small, tight circle of dependable comrades becomes your true anchor in the swirling chaos of suspicion and danger. It's a stark contrast to the earlier, more expansive sense of shared humanity. It's an unresolved academic debate among historians whether the harsh conditions of the Silk Road fostered more solidarity or more opportunism within caravans. From your experience, it was a volatile mix of both, with external threats often forcing cohesion, but internal pressures constantly testing those bonds. The answer likely lies in the specifics of each caravan and the character of its members. You also become acutely aware of the merchant's role in fostering this internal strife. Their inherent suspicion, their reluctance to share provisions generously, their often arbitrary decisions about who gets what, all these contribute to the simmering pot of resentment that can boil over into betrayal. They rely on your protection, yet their actions often inadvertently undermine the very unity they need. It's a tragic irony of the Silk Road. The ever-present threat of betrayal forces you to become more self-reliant, to trust your own instincts above all else. You clean your own blade with meticulous care, relying on its sharpness rather than the untested resolve of your neighbor. You conserve your own water, ensuring your survival even if others falter. It's a lonely existence, this constant vigilance against both external and internal enemies, but it is the only way to survive. As the days turn into weeks and the miles stretch endlessly, the lessons of betrayal sink deep into your soul. They harden you, making you warier, less trusting, perhaps even a little cynical. But they also make you stronger, more resilient, and utterly focused on the grim task at hand. The Silk Road does not merely transport goods. It strips away illusions, revealing the raw, often brutal core of human nature. And in this harsh classroom, you learn the hard truth: the most dangerous paths are not always those marked by bandits, but those paved with the shifting sands of human loyalty. Despite the grinding monotony, the constant danger, and the insidious threat of betrayal, there remains a powerful beacon that pulls you forward, the whispers of civilization. In the vast, desolate stretches of the Silk Road, the distant promise of bustling cities, of established markets, and of the familiar comforts of settled life acts as a powerful motivator. A mirage that, unlike others in the desert, eventually becomes real. You hear tales of these great urban centers from other travelers, from merchants who have passed through them countless times. They speak of Samarkand, the Pearl of the East, with its magnificent azure domes and bustling bazaars overflowing with exotic goods. They describe Chang'an, the ancient capital, a sprawling metropolis where 1 million souls lived, a center of learning, art, and unimaginable wealth. And further west, Aleppo and Damascus, gateways to the Mediterranean, vibrant hubs where East met West in a glorious confluence of cultures. These names are not just points on a map. They are destination symbols of the culmination of your arduous journey and the promise of a brief, glorious respite. The thought of reaching one of these cities, however briefly, is what often keeps you going when your legs ache and your spirit flags. You imagine walking on cobbled streets instead of shifting sand, sleeping under a solid roof instead of the open sky, and eating a warm, freshly cooked meal instead of dried rations. The sounds of a city, the chatter of crowds, the cries of vendors, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, are a stark contrast to the oppressive silence of the desert, and they sound like the sweetest music imaginable. As you draw closer to a major city, the signs of civilization begin to appear subtle at first, then increasingly undeniable. The tracks in the sand become more numerous, indicating heavier traffic. You start seeing more scattered remnants of other caravans, a broken wheel, a discarded piece of fabric, the embers of a recently abandoned campfire. The very air seems to change, carrying the faint, almost imperceptible scent of wood smoke human habitation, and perhaps even the distant aroma of baking bread. These tiny sensory details are like a lifeline pulling you forward with renewed vigor. The landscape itself transforms. The endless, featureless dunes gradually give way to more varied terrain, rocky outcrops, then sparse vegetation, and eventually the first cultivated fields. You might spot a shepherd with his flock, or a farmer tending to his crops living a settled life that seems impossibly peaceful compared to your own. These are the outer fringes of the urban sprawl, the supporting arteries that feed the great cities. You begin to encounter more people-lone travelers on horseback. Small groups of local merchants with carts pulled by oxen villagers carrying their produce to market. These encounters are less guarded than those in the deep desert. There's a sense of shared purpose, a collective movement towards the urban center. The risk of banditry doesn't vanish entirely, but it often shifts to more organized, less random attacks as you move closer to the established power structures of the city. The sight of the city walls, even from a great distance, is an indescribable moment. It's often just a faint line against the horizon at first, almost indistinguishable from a geological feature. But as you draw nearer, the line solidifies, grows taller, revealing the imposing ramparts and fortified gates. It's a structure of immense human effort, a symbol of permanence and order in a world defined by impermanence and chaos. A wave of profound relief mixed with a surge of anticipation washes over you. You made it. Entering a city after weeks or months in the wilderness is a sensory overload. The sheer cacophony of sounds is almost deafening. After the desert's silence, the insistent cries of hawkers, the bleating of sheep, the neighing of horses, the babble of countless languages, the rhythmic hammering of artisans. The air is thick with 1,000 different smells, pungent spices roasting meats, human sweat animal dung, exotic perfumes, and the comforting scent of wood smoke from countless hearths. Your senses dulled by the desert reel under the assault, but it is a welcome assault. The visual spectacle is equally overwhelming. Colors explode around you, vibrant textiles hanging from stalls, the gleaming brass of wares, the intricate patterns of tiled mosques and palaces. People dressed in a bewildering array of costumes jostle past you, their faces a kaleidoscope of races and cultures. You see fine silks, glistening jewelry, and intricate craftsmanship that was only a distant dream on the open road. It's a stark reminder of the immense wealth and diversity that flows along the Silk Road and the ultimate destination of the very cargo you've risked your life to protect. You observe the city guards clad in their gleaming armor, their weapons polished and maintained. They look well fed, their faces unmarred by the sun and wind, their posture relaxed. A pang of envy, however fleeting, might cross your mind. Their misery, you imagine, is of a different, more comfortable sort. Yet you also recognize a certain softness in their eyes, a lack of the grim intensity that defines your own. You realize that you have seen a world and endured a hardship that they can barely comprehend. The market itself is a bewildering labyrinth of stalls and shouting vendors. The goods are incredible: fresh fruits and vegetables, sweet pastries, exotic spices, glittering jewelry, finely crafted leather goods, and, of course, the shimmering silks that are the lifeblood of the trade. You watch the merchants from your caravan quickly getting to work haggling, buying and selling, their faces alight with the thrill of commerce. This is their world, their purpose, and you have delivered them to it. For a brief period, you find a semblance of what might be called comfort. You might be housed in a caravanserai, a large inn, specifically designed for traveling merchants and their guards offering communal rooms, stables for the animals, and a measure of security. The walls are thick, offering protection from both the elements and unseen threats. The luxury of sleeping under a roof, even a rough one, feels immense. You might even find a bathhouse, a true paradise where you can finally scrub away weeks of accumulated dirt. Feeling human again for the first time in what feels like an eternity. It's a common historical misconception that Silk Road cities were simply destinations. In reality, many were also vital manufacturing and processing centers where raw materials were transformed into finished goods. The bustling workshops, the roar of furnaces, and the constant hum of industry were as much a part of the urban landscape as the markets. You occasionally catch glimpses of this, the true engine of the trade. These city stops are also where you might get paid a small pouch of coin that represents weeks of unrelenting suffering. It's a tangible reward, a moment of satisfaction. You might spend some of it on a warm meal, a piece of fresh fruit, or perhaps a small, inexpensive comfort item. It's a bittersweet moment, this brief taste of prosperity, knowing that it will soon be spent and you will be back on the road earning more. However, even in the heart of civilization, the underlying vigilance remains. You've heard too many stories of guards becoming complacent, falling prey to thieves or con artists in the city's crowded alleys. Your instincts, honed by the desert, are still on high alert. You scan faces, assess threats, always aware of your surroundings. The city offers different kinds of dangers, more subtle perhaps, but no less real. As the days of rest draw to a close, the cycle begins anew. Merchants prepare their new purchases, camels are reloaded, and the caravan prepares for its next leg, either deeper into new lands or back along the path you've already trod. The allure of the city, however strong, is always temporary. The road calls again, and you, the miserable guard, must answer. But as you step back into the dust, heading once more towards the unknown, you carry with you the vibrant images and the sweet sounds of the city, a tangible reminder of the destination and the ultimate purpose of your arduous, relentless journey. The brief respite of the city, with its vibrant chaos and fleeting comforts, quickly recedes into a hazy memory as you embark on the final push. This is the last leg of the journey, often the most brutal, where the cumulative exhaustion of weeks or even months of travel threatens to shatter your resolve. It is a desperate struggle, pushing your body and mind to their absolute limits as the destination, while tantalizingly close, seems to recede with every agonizing step. The path ahead might be just as challenging as any you've faced, another desolate stretch of desert, a treacherous mountain pass, or even a region known for its particularly aggressive bandit gangs, eager to strike at a caravan nearing its journey's end, loaded with newly acquired goods. The knowledge that you are so close to completion, yet still vulnerable, adds an unbearable layer of tension. Every mile feels heavier, every hour longer. Your body is a symphony of aches and pains. Your feet, once blistered, are now calloused and numb, but the deep ache in your joints is a constant companion. Your shoulders protest the weight of your weapon and pack, and your back feels perpetually stiff. Sleep offers little true rest as your mind remains wired, anticipating the next challenge. You are running on fumes, sustained only by a grim determination to see this through. The camels, too, show signs of extreme fatigue. Their lumbering gait becomes slower, their groans more frequent. The camel drivers, usually stoic, murmur words of encouragement, or sometimes frustration to their beasts. Maintaining the animal's health is paramount for a crippled camel. Now so close to the destination would be a catastrophic setback, possibly forcing the caravan to abandon valuable cargo or even entire loads. The merchants, typically driven by their pursuit of profit, also feel the strain. Their faces are drawn, their eyes shadowed with exhaustion. They push you subtly or directly to maintain pace, to speed up their anxiety about reaching the final market palpable. You resent their impatience, yet you understand it. They have invested heavily, and the finish line is in sight. The threat of bandits, far from diminishing, often intensifies in these final stretches. Marauders know that caravans nearing cities are likely to be laden with valuable goods, either from their original journey or from new acquisitions in the urban markets. They are desperate, cunning, and often more numerous. Your vigilance, already stretched thin, must now be at its absolute peak. Every shadow, every distant dust cloud is analyzed with heightened intensity. You recall a particular pass, a narrow, winding defile through jagged mountains. The air was thin and cold, a stark contrast to the desert heat, and the path was treacherous, strewn with loose rocks. The caravan moved in a single vulnerable line, a perfect target for an ambush. Your heart hammered against your ribs with every turn, every shadow. The memory of the bandit raid from earlier in the journey, the cold silence of the aftermath, played on an endless loop in your mind. This was the moment of truth where all your training, all your suffering would be put to the ultimate test. During that pass, a sudden rock slide, triggered either by natural forces or perhaps by unseen hands, sent a cascade of boulders tumbling down, narrowly missing the lead camel. The ensuing chaos was terrifying. Camels rearing, men shouting, the sound of splintering wood. You scrambled, helping to clear the path, assessing the damage, your body moving on pure adrenaline. It was a reminder that even without human attackers, the very environment could be a formidable, deadly foe. It's a point of contention among scholars whether natural disasters like rock slides and mountain passes were more significant threats than banditry in certain sections of the Silk Road. From a guard's perspective, both presented immediate life-threatening dangers requiring constant alertness. Sleep is barely more than unconsciousness. You collapse onto the hard ground, your body screaming for rest, only to be yanked awake what feels like moments later by the cold or the distant cry of a jackal or the insistent voice of the next watch. Your dreams are a chaotic jumble of sand faces and flashes of steel. You crave true deep sleep, but it remains a distant, unattainable luxury. Your senses are heightened to an almost unbearable degree. The smell of distant rain, the faint murmur of a stream, the sight of a lone bird soaring overhead, each sensation is amplified, both a source of fleeting beauty and a reminder of your own raw, exposed vulnerability. You are stripped bare by the journey, every nerve ending exposed, every emotion amplified. The camaraderie among the guards, forged in shared suffering, reaches its peak in these final days. You lean on each other, offering silent encouragement, sharing the last drops of water, helping a faltering comrade. The petty grievances and suspicions of earlier weeks fall away, replaced by a grim, unified determination. You are a brotherhood of the miserable, bound by the shared goal of reaching the end. There's a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere of the caravan as the destination draws truly near. A lifting of spirits, a lightening of the air. Even the camels seem to walk with a little more purpose. The merchants, though still anxious, begin to discuss their plans for sales for their next journey. This palpable sense of anticipation, however cautious, becomes a shared current that pulls everyone along. You find yourself doing extraordinary things, pushing yourself past limits you never knew you had, carrying more than your share simply because someone else can't, running on fumes fueled by the sheer force of will. This is the ultimate test of endurance, a final brutal gauntlet before the promise of rest. You are a machine programmed for survival, programmed for delivery. An interesting, if minor, historical detail about the end of such long journeys was the common practice of special rituals or prayers performed by caravan leaders upon sighting their final destination. These varied by culture and religion, but served to acknowledge the perils overcome and give thanks for safe passage, something that often went unnoticed by the exhausted guards. And then it appears. Not the faint line on the horizon, but the unmistakable sprawling outline of the city. The walls loom large, the buildings within visible in detail, perhaps even the glint of sun on a distant dome. The sense of profound relief is overwhelming, a wave that threatens to buckle your knees. You made it. You survived. The endless miles, the gnawing thirst, the bitter cold, the terrifying nights, the fear of bandits and betrayal, all of it culminates in this single triumphant moment. As the caravan slowly winds its way towards the city gates, you feel a profound exhaustion, but also a fierce pride. You protected the cargo. You endured. You brought these fortunes, these lives to their destination. The misery hasn't vanished, but for this moment it is overshadowed by the quiet, overwhelming satisfaction of completion. The final push is over. You are here. The city gates loom, a gaping maw that promises rest and relief. As the caravan slowly trundles through the cacophony of urban life, washes over you a sudden, overwhelming flood after the desert's silence. You are no longer on the Silk Road, but within its beating heart, a vibrant, chaotic organism. Yet even amidst the clamor and crowds, a profound stillness settles upon you. You are a scarred survivor, forever marked by the brutal journey, a ghost of your former self transformed by the endless dust and the constant threat. The initial rush of relief at reaching your destination is quickly tempered by an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. It's not just the physical weariness, but a deep, bone-weary fatigue that has permeated your very soul. You feel hollowed out, stripped bare by the elements, by the constant vigilance, by the sheer, unremitting misery of the road. The bustling market, the vibrant colors, the myriad smells, they are almost too much to process. Your senses accustomed to the stark simplicity of the desert reel under the assault. You watch as the merchants, their faces now beaming with relief and anticipation, eagerly begin the process of offloading their precious cargo. They bark orders, haggle loudly, their energy seemingly boundless. For them, this is the triumphant culmination, the sweet taste of profit. For you, it's just the end of one long, arduous shift and the beginning of an uncertain future. Your responsibility for the cargo is over, a weight lifted, but the marks it left upon you remain. Your body bears the undeniable evidence of your journey. Your skin is tanned and leathery, crisscrossed with a map of fine lines etched by the sun and wind. Your hands are rough, calloused, bearing the scars of minor cuts and abrasions. Your eyes, once perhaps bright and curious, are now narrowed, perpetually scanning, holding a depth of weary experience that belies your years. You move with a quiet efficiency, your movements economical and grained by countless hours of walking and vigilance. The familiar routines of civilian life feel alien. A soft bed feels strange after months of sleeping on hard ground. The quiet hum of a settled home is unsettling after the constant whisper of the wind or the rhythmic plod of camel hooves. You find yourself instinctively scanning rooftops for potential ambush points, or listening for unusual sounds in the crowded streets, your guard still up, even when there's no immediate danger. The desert's lessons are deeply ingrained habits that won't easily be shed. You realize with a touch of melancholy that you are different. The person who embarked on that journey no longer exists. The naive hopes, the romantic notions of adventure, they have been scoured away by the relentless reality of the Silk Road. In their place is a quiet resilience, a hardened core of survival, and a profound appreciation for simple things. A full water skin, a piece of fresh bread, a moment of silence without fear. The bonds you formed with your fellow guards, forged in the crucible of shared suffering, are unlike any other. You may never see them again, but there is an unspoken understanding, a silent recognition that passes between those who have faced the desert's wrath together. You are members of an exclusive, albeit miserable club. You share a secret knowledge, a grim wisdom, that only those who have truly endured the Silk Road can possess. You receive your pay, a small bag of coins that feels heavier than it should. Not just with its metallic weight, but with the weight of every mile, every ache, every moment of fear it represents. It's a testament to your survival, a tangible reward for your misery. What will you do with it? Perhaps buy a warm meal, a fresh set of clothes, or find a place to simply rest away from the dust and the demands. The freedom to choose, however small, feels immense. As you wander through the city, you see people going about their daily lives, seemingly oblivious to the vast, dangerous world beyond their walls. They buy and sell, they laugh and talk. They dream of futures that do not involve endless stretches of sand or the glint of a bandit's blade. You feel a curious detachment from them, as if you belong to a different species, one that has glimpsed the raw, unvarnished truth of existence. You might find yourself drawn to the caravanserai, the inns where new caravans are forming, preparing to embark on their own perilous journeys. You see the fresh-faced recruits, their eyes alight with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. You see the experienced guards, their faces already etched with familiar lines of weariness. You could offer them advice, a grim warning, but you hold your tongue. Some lessons can only be learned through the harsh crucible of experience. It's a point of ongoing academic debate whether the psychological impact of such long, arduous journeys permanently altered the personalities of those who undertook them. Did they return as hardened pragmatists, Or did the profound experiences leave them with a deeper sense of human resilience and connection? From your own experience, it's a complicated mix, a permanent scar on the soul that makes you both tougher and more contemplative. The Silk Road has etched its indelible marks upon you, not just on your body, but on your spirit. You have seen the raw beauty of the desert and its terrifying indifference. You have faced death, both human and natural, and emerged against all odds a survivor. You carry the whispers of the wind, the taste of dust, the memory of desperate nights, and the quiet camaraderie of shared misery within you. This existence, however miserable, has forged you anew. And as you settle into a quiet corner, the city's sounds a distant hum. You close your eyes, no longer fighting the deep pull of exhaustion. The journey is over for now, but the Silk Road and the miserable existence you endured upon it will forever be a part of who you are. The sands may shift, erasing tracks, but they cannot erase the indelible marks left upon a scarred survivor.